The opulent dining hall of the five-star restaurant glowed beneath glittering crystal chandeliers, filled with the clink of fine silverware, bursts of laughter, and the soft melodies of a grand piano in the corner. Men in perfectly tailored suits and women in radiant evening gowns moved with effortless grace, their actions deliberate, showcasing wealth and sophistication. Yet, amid this dazzling display of elegance, one woman sat alone at a quiet table, her understated presence drawing attention despite her stillness. Clad in a simple, dark kimono-style dress that spoke of dignity rather than extravagance, her silver hair was neatly pinned, framing a face marked not just by age but by the wisdom of a life well lived. Her hands, resting on the pristine tablecloth, trembled slightly as they held a small pendant near her heart. She was a millionaire, a fact known to everyone in the room. Whispers had spread through the crowd the moment she entered. "That's the Japanese tycoon who built a business empire in Tokyo," some murmured. "She's in New York for high-stakes investments," others speculated. But tonight, despite the reverence her presence commanded, there was something noticeably different about her. She sat alone, without aides or interpreters. When the waiter presented the menu, her eyes scanned the English text with growing confusion. She tried to speak, but her words faltered, emerging as broken, heavily accented phrases that left those around her puzzled. The room's atmosphere shifted subtly. Some diners hid amused glances, while others exchanged pitying looks. Even the restaurant staff, caught off guard, shared awkward glances as they struggled to understand her requests. What began as admiration for her stature turned into an uneasy spectacle. This woman, a titan of wealth and influence, was suddenly vulnerable, caught in a moment where her voice couldn't reach those around her. In her eyes, beneath a carefully maintained composure, flickered a trace of loneliness that no fortune could erase. If you believe in the power of compassion, second chances, and the small human gestures that can transform someone's world, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Heartland Stories. Your support fuels our mission to share meaningful, true-to-life stories that resonate deeply. As the evening wore on, the tension at her table grew. Servers tried their best, pointing to menu items and speaking louder as if volume could bridge the language barrier, but their efforts only deepened her distress. She shook her head softly, her trembling hands now gripping the pendant more tightly, as if it held a silent wish for someone to understand her. In the background, a young waitress observed the scene. She wasn't among the elite staff typically assigned to high-profile guests. She was a recent hire, often tasked with clearing dishes, refilling water glasses, and tending to less desirable tables. Her uniform was plain, her ponytail slightly messy from the evening's rush, and her name tag read simply Sana. Throughout the night, she had moved discreetly, avoiding the sharp eyes of her stricter supervisors. But as she watched the woman falter, a memory stirred within her, a recollection of her own Japanese grandmother, who had spoken only halting English despite years in America. Sana remembered countless evenings at her grandmother's kitchen table, learning Japanese phrases her peers never understood, translating for her when others grew frustrated. It was a quiet part of her identity, a skill she rarely had the chance to use. But now, in this lavish restaurant, watching a woman of such stature shrink under the weight of being misunderstood, Sana realized she might hold the key to reaching her. She paused, glancing at her manager, who was already murmuring in exasperation with another server. It wasn't her table, and protocol didn't permit her to step in, but her heart urged her forward. Summoning her courage, she approached the woman's table. The other diners watched, intrigued, as this unassuming waitress, seemingly out of place among the polished staff and pristine linens, knelt slightly and met the woman's gaze with kindness. In soft, clear Japanese, she spoke. The effect was immediate. The woman's eyes widened, sparkling with astonishment. For a moment, she seemed stunned. Then, as Sana spoke again, her lips parted and tears brimmed. Relief flooded her expression, like dawn breaking through a stormy sky. For the first time that night, she smiled. Words flowed from her, fluid and elegant, and Sana responded effortlessly, closing a divide that had seemed insurmountable moments before. The room fell into a hushed awe. Diners who had whispered or smirked now leaned forward, captivated. The millionaire, once isolated and voiceless, was now laughing gently, her voice warm with gratitude as she conversed with Sanaa. The young waitress listened attentively, relaying the woman's meal preferences to the kitchen and tending to her comfort with quiet care. The simple act of being understood had reshaped the evening, restoring the dignity of a woman who had been diminished despite her wealth. As the night progressed, Sanaa remained nearby, assisting whenever needed, ensuring the woman felt seen and valued. The other guests couldn't look away, witnessing a profound lesson unfold. In a world consumed by status, wealth, and appearances, it wasn't the fine suits or eloquent accents that brought solace, but the gentle empathy of a young waitress who carried the language of her grandmother in her heart. The millionaire was no stranger to admiration for her fortune. People revered her achievements, flocked to her empire, and sought her investments. But tonight was unique. Tonight, she was reminded of something far more valuable: the quiet power of human connection. Before leaving, she reached for Sanaa's hand, grasping it with a strength that defied her years. Tears traced her cheeks as she whispered words only Sanaa could understand, words of deep gratitude that transcended any language. When the woman departed, escorted by her driver, the restaurant hummed with subdued conversations. Some diners were humbled, others inspired. Even Sanaa's stern manager, who had earlier cast disapproving glances, seemed to soften, recognizing the immeasurable value of her actions. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, a letter arrived for Sanaa at the restaurant. Inside was a handwritten note in Japanese, accompanied by an invitation. The millionaire woman had invited her to a cultural foundation event in the city, not as a server, but as an honored guest. Included was a scholarship offer. The woman had learned Sanaa was studying languages at a community college, struggling to cover tuition. The note explained that she wished to fund Sanaa's education, honoring the voice that had reached out to her when no one else could. Tears fell as Sanaa read the letter. She hadn't imagined her small act of kindness would ripple beyond that night, yet it had altered her life. The millionaire had given her more than financial support. She had given her validation, affirming that her heart and heritage were treasures worth celebrating. Years later, Sanaa would stand on global stages as a professional translator, connecting cultures and languages, always remembering the night it all began. She often thought of the tears in the woman's eyes, the silence that enveloped a room of affluent strangers, and the profound truth that emerged: kindness and dignity outweigh any fortune. Sometimes, the quietest voice carries the greatest power. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Heartland Stories. Your support helps us share stories that highlight the beauty of empathy, compassion, and human connection. Before we close, please share in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed a moment where a simple act of kindness broke through a barrier? We'd love to hear your stories. Because, ultimately, what lingers most isn't the wealth we amass, but the love we give.